In this episode, I'm here with Luke Carlson, the founder and CEO of Discover Strength. Luke speaks around the world on the fundamentals of building successful businesses and leadership. He was one of the speakers at the 2017 MINDBODY BOLD Conference, and today he's going to be sharing his 10 fundamentals for leading and managing people. Growing a small business isn't easy, and to be successful, we know 3 things for sure. You have to work hard, you have to be bold, and you must constantly learn. We're gathering some of the best minds in the business world to share their ideas and strategies with you so you can grow your business easier, be more profitable, and have a lot more fun being a business owner. We're on a mission to connect the world of wellness, and this is the MindBody Bold Show. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Carlson. Welcome back to another episode of The Bold Show. Luke, are you ready to be bold?
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks for having me. Excited about being here.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And so let's talk about it. You have 10 fundamentals for leading and managing people. I've gotten to see your videos. You definitely not only appreciate leadership and how important that is to a business, but you've studied the game and you've also helped hundreds of people develop leadership within the organization.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I think when it comes down to it, we're all attracted to this industry around the technical work that we do. We're passionate about being a coach, about being a personal trainer, a yogi, a Pilates instructor, and that work is important work. Mm-hmm. My message to the entrepreneur, to the operator in this field is the real work, the real calling is that of being a leader and a manager, and really both of them, because I think that's the best way that we can grow our business. And I think when it comes down to it, as satisfying as the work that we do in this wellness community is, man, the work of being a leader and a manager is the most rewarding, fulfilling work that we can do. And I kind of want to open up that calling to so many people in this wellness space.
Absolutely. You know, there's a lot of people that think they're great leaders, or maybe they even are, but what happens as your organization grows, you have to develop different levels of leadership. Absolutely. As you experience more growth and maybe even sub-leaders below you, right?
Of course.
So you have 10 fundamentals that you're going to share with us on leading and managing people. So I want to just dig right into that. And so let's start with your number 10, I guess, and work our way down.
Sure.
Is that good?
Sure, yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Mike, I think there's a difference between leading and managing. And for some reason, you know, over the last 10 years, I think specifically, we've assumed that management is like falling out of favor. I want to lead my people, I don't want to be a manager. Somehow there's a negative connotation with being a manager, and I don't think that's the case. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with leadership, and then we'll move into management. But to be great, I really think you have to understand the leadership and the management. So the first leadership practice is providing a clear direction. As the leader of the organization, you have to communicate to your team, this is the direction we are headed in. And the way we do that is just answer some really basic questions, like what are our core values? Okay. Where are we going to be 10 years from now? What's our big, hairy, audacious goal? Where are we going to be 3 years from now? All right, what's our purpose? Why do we exist? And what's the niche? What's the one area that we want to be the best in the world at and put all of our energy in just to that one area? What's our 3-year goal? Right. What's our 1-year goal? And then lastly, what are the 3 things that make us different on paper? So that's about 6 things I just covered there. Those 6 elements really define the vision of the business, the direction we're going in. Right. And then after we've defined that direction, we have to get everybody else excited about that direction. Because ultimately, Mike, no one that works with me, none of my employees want to work for Luke. They don't want to execute Luke's vision. They want to be inspired by a vision that becomes theirs. Right. So the terminology that we use is, instead of shared with all, the vision is shared by all. When you come to work in the morning, you want to be a part of that vision and you want to row in that same direction. So that's number 1, is awesome. Great leaders provide clear direction first and foremost.
Love it. All right, cool. Let's dive into 2.
Okay, number 2 is they provide the necessary tools. Okay. So tools are resources, time, attention, training, people, technology. The Gallup organization does a survey called the Gallup 12, where they interview employees of all different size companies to understand their engagement in the work that they do. And one of the things that leads to disengagement is a no answer to this question. The question is, do you feel like you have the tools to do your work well? And if they answer no to that question, it's a very emotional response. Right. So we have to give the tools, the resources, the training, the people to our direct reports. The most important tool that we can provide is also the least expensive. It's time and attention from the leader and the manager. That's the one that we spend the least amount of time on, and it absolutely has the greatest impact on engagement and the performance of our direct report. So when we're thinking about tools, think about the time and attention from you as the leader to your direct report.
Love it. Okay, cool. Number 3.
Okay, number 3 is, now that we've provided clear direction and we've given that person tools, we need to get the heck out of their way. So we call this letting go of the vine. We want to have a mentality of delegate and elevate. You want to delegate things off of your plate that other people can be doing because you're not great at them or they don't bring you energy. It's just not your sweet spot. And then you elevate yourself to working on the things that you're uniquely, genetically encoded to do. And as the organization grows, you continually have to look at what you're doing as a leader, take things off of your plate, delegate them, and elevate them to working on the work that only you can be working on. And then you have to give your people autonomy. Letting go of the vine is what we call this leadership practice, is let your people run with their work, give them autonomy. One of my favorite authors, Daniel Pink, he writes a book about motivation called Drive, and he says there's 3 things that contribute to motivation: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So here we're speaking to autonomy. Okay, great people need to be able to run with their work. So that's number 3, the third practice.
Awesome. And guys, that book Drive is incredible. So that's something you can pick up right away to really dive in more into what he just spoke about.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, let's go into 4.
Okay, so number 4 is what we call act with the greater good in mind. Okay. So the greater good is not some fuzzy altruistic concept. The greater good is the vision that we talked about at the beginning. It's that clear direction. As a leader, I need to make sure my actions, my decisions, and my personal example are all in line with the elements of that vision, with that clear direction. All right, so many times in organizations, leaders make decisions based around what's best for me rather than what's best for the organization. And I tell you, you grow faster when everyone thinks about greater good in all of their discussions, in all of the issues that they're processing as a company, is what's the greater good. And we've defined the greater good. It's the direction that we've all decided that we're going to head in together. Okay. So that's number 4.
When you find that somebody maybe isn't a good fit for that direction, maybe you just realize that they're not passionate about it, is there something that you do at that point, whether it's have a conversation with that person or possibly even part ways, because it can hurt the feeling everyone else in the group gets?
Mike, that's a great question. So part of that greater good is core values. And if that person is not aligned with our core values, then we can't teach them values. I mean, your values are ingrained in you. Right. You need to go find an organization and that shares your same core values. Sure. I'm not going to train you on core values. I can train you on skill and technique and so many other things, the technical skills, but I can't train you on values. You're going to be happier, you're going to be more engaged if you just go find an organization where the values align with your own values. So if someone's not a value fit, we're going to manage them out of the company. And that's not... some people would say, God, that's so hardcore. No, that's the best thing we can ever do for that person.
Well, and not just that person, but let's say you have a company with 8 people there, and 7 people really want to see this dream come to life. Yeah. That one person could be frustrating the other 7, Absolutely. And you may lose A players that Absolutely. Really want the vision because they feel like they're being held back. The
best thing you can do to demotivate your A players is to allow a B or C player to exist in your culture. 100%. So when we define core values, we don't want to just have core values. We want to have committable core values. 100%. We're willing to make difficult, uncomfortable decisions around them. And that's when the values really come to life.
And that's part of being a leader,
Absolutely.
Is making the decisions that some others can't.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go into 5.
Okay, and the last one is what we call take a clarity break. So a clarity break is just taking time away from your work, getting out of the office, okay? This can be in your den in the morning, it can be at Starbucks, it's once a week, it's once a month for 30 minutes to an hour where you sit down with a blank notebook in front of you and you just think on the business. You're not working in the business. You're stepping back. You're taking a 3,000-foot approach, looking down on the business, asking yourself some key questions. The first few times you do this, you're going to stare at a blank notebook for 5-10 minutes and put nothing on paper. Pretty soon, you're going to have this stream of consciousness, and you're just going to jot down, capture these thoughts, capture this in a journal, in a notebook, and build this into your weekly routine. I do it every week, Friday mornings from 5:45 to 6:45 at Starbucks. Everyone has a different cadence to this, but I would say once a week, once a month. For some people, it's an hour. For some people, it's once a month for a full day. They just do their critical thinking about the business, about their people, about the direction, about the values of the organization, about their competition, about their strategy. Man, the toughest, most important work that we do as a leader is thinking. And so many leaders, in the stress of the day-to-day, never take time to truly think about the organization, the direction it's heading. So we would call this take a clarity break. Protect your confidence. Think about how you've been showing up as a leader.
You know, the funny thing is, this is something I was recommended to do by mentors, and my problem was, as I started thinking on the business, I realized I started solving problems in it, and I had to keep bringing myself out.
Absolutely.
So I was given this advice because I'm a very competitive person, and I'm pretty sure a lot of business owners that are watching and listening are very competitive people as well. And this worked great for me, where you go, okay, if a competitor with the same resources was able to double their business in the next month, what would they have had to do?
Yeah.
And I just start thinking about them because my competitive nature is breaking down what they might have done. And then I just start doing that. And guys, I do that regularly. So for little problems, big problems, I always think if my competition did it better, what would they have done in order to make that happen? So, okay, cool. Let's dive into number 6.
Yeah, now we're going to move into really the management side.
Okay.
So everything else we talked about was being a great leader. Now, what a great manager does is they are working in the business. If leadership is vision, direction, management is bringing it down to the ground and executing on it. And in order to be a great boss, if we can use that term, we need both. So the first practice of being a great manager is having clear expectations. So we said leaders provide direction, managers now provide clear expectations. And those expectations are really around just 3 things. Number 1, values. And we talked about that already. Are we really clear on values? Number 2 is roles. Do you understand, high level, the top 5 things that you are accountable for in this organization? You and I have to be on the exact same page as to what I expect of you and what you expect of me. So I want on paper the 5 things that you're responsible for. This is kind of like 80-20 rule. If we can just document 20% of what you do, that really produces 80% of the results in our business, and so we're on the same page then. I don't want to go home and be upset at Mike for not doing his job when Mike thinks his job is different than what I think Mike's job is. We have to have the same view around what those key roles are. So that's the second thing we need clear expectations around is roles.
And that comes down to what you talked about earlier, is having really good alignment and communication.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
And the last one is that we need to have good, clear expectations around is really what's most important now. And we would just call this your quarterly priorities. So if you can have every direct report, understand the values of the organization. Number 2, what their key roles are, the 5 things they have to show up and do. And then lastly, do they really understand what's important in the next 90 days to keep moving us toward our 1-year goal and our 3-year goal and our big, hairy, audacious goal that's 10 years down the road. So that's the second management practice, the first management practice, those 3 components.
Perfect. Now let's go into the second one.
Okay, communicate clearly.
Okay.
So great managers are great communicators. And there's just a couple tools I want your audience to think about when they think about communicating clearly. The first one is a question to answer ratio. As a great manager, you should be asking far more questions than you are providing statements. And let me tell you, when we're the entrepreneur, when we started the business and we were the only employee for quite some time, and then we had 2 employees, we were the arbiter of all decision making. We made statements all the time. As we start to grow our staff and we manage other people, we have to transition into a position where we are asking most of the questions. So 80% of what comes out of our mouth when we're interacting with a direct report should be a question versus a statement.
You know, I actually learned that from Dick Vitale, you know,
absolutely,
famous coach. And what he said is a lot of coaches, and it goes down to management and leadership, right? They'll make the mistake of telling their players what to do all the time, like as they're on the court. And he said it's better to take a step back. They know what to do now. Let them do it.
Sure.
And then just ask them questions later as to why they did what they did.
Sure.
Do they think they could have done something better? And the players actually start talking more. They communicate with each other more, and they actually come up with plays and ideas way more on their own.
Sure.
So I think the same thing translates in business. If you
Absolutely.
tell people what they should be doing all the time, you never let them start creating the skills of coming up with ideas and solutions on their own.
Absolutely.
Because you're doing it all for them.
And then you bog yourself down as a leader. If I have 6 direct reports and every day they're coming into my office saying, I have this issue, help, and I say, you bet, I'm going to solve that for you.
Right.
I'm not doing any of my own work. You need to come into me and bring me your issue. I'll ask you some key questions and send you out the door, and you have to go figure out an answer to that. I'm going to be a sounding board to you, but I'm not going to provide you with all of the answers.
And eventually, they'll already ask themselves the questions before they get to you, and they're really just kind of giving you their ideas that were already
Absolutely.
thought out.
The second thing I want to touch on around communicating clearly is the idea that I should not make assumptions that I know where your head's at. Man, if we come out of a meeting, if we come out of an interaction, and I'm thinking, Mike is upset at me, okay, I can't make that assumption. If I think you're upset at me, if I assume you are, I have to go to you and just ask, where do you stand on this? I mean, great managers don't hesitate to just have that difficult, uncomfortable conversation and just look you in the eye and say, Mike, tell me where you're at. I sensed in that meeting you were uncomfortable with what I was introducing there. Tell me where you're at. And I may find out, no, Mike's not upset with what I just rolled out in that meeting at all. He's got something going on at home that's really on his mind, and I was reading him wrong during that meeting, and we can have that conversation. So no assumptions is the litmus test of whether or not we're truly communicating clearly as a manager.
I like that. Okay, cool. Next one.
Number 3, and before everyone falls asleep, let me just get into this one.
Falls asleep.
If
anyone's falling asleep to this, they're crazy, because this is a great one.
I'm going to talk about meetings, all right? Now, everyone despises meetings, and I am obsessed with meetings. I think a well-run meeting is the most important thing a manager can do for his or her studio, business. The reason I think culturally we've grown to despise meetings, Mike, and Patrick Lencioni wrote a great book called Death by Meeting. People just, it's so in vogue to say, my God, I could actually get some work done if I didn't have to go to so many meetings.
Right.
Because most of the meetings we go to are poor meetings. They're bad meetings. So it's not that meetings are innately bad or unproductive. It's just how we're running the meetings. And so I think if we run the meeting the right way, we get the team together, we have the same agenda, the same time, the same day, week in and week out, and we're solving key issues in the organization, not just talking about stuff, but actually solving issues, and there's action that takes place after those meetings, and we're having conflict in those meetings. Great meetings should have conflict, ideological conflict. I mean, we are arguing over the key issues, not interpersonal conflict, but ideological conflict. Man, there is nothing more exciting and engaging than being a part of a meeting, deciding the direction of the organization and wrestling with the key issues in the organization. I mean, that's as good as it gets. If there's conflict, if there's that interchange in the meeting, you want to enter that danger. So number 3 is just have a meeting pulse. Meet every week with your team, whether it's an hour, whether it's 90 minutes. If you have that discipline, the organization will always grow faster.
I love it. So Death by Meeting, guys, get that book. And another really great book that you may have read as well, that talks about conflict and trust as well, is Overcoming the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Fantastic book.
It's an incredible book that I think anyone, if you have a team of 2, 3 or more people, which most small businesses already start having, this is a very important book that can give you the fundamentals of how to cooperate with that many different types of people and personalities.
It's one of my all-time favorite business books, and I would say don't read it and study it, and read it over and over and integrate it into everything you do with your team. That's a fantastic recommendation.
Awesome. Okay, next one.
Number 4 is this practice of what we call quarterly conversations. Okay. So not a performance review, a quarterly conversation. So every 90 days, I have scheduled a one-on-one meeting with you, and here's the key. It's outside of the office, all right? We're going to coffee, we're going on a walk, I'm taking you to lunch, we're getting outside of the office, and I'm not bringing paper with me, I have not filled out a form, this is not going in your file. If I bring paper, it's just because I wanted to jot down some notes. Don't let the form get in the way of just having an honest conversation. So quarterly conversation, I'm gonna sit down and just talk with you around 3 things. How you're living our core values, the soul of the organization. How you're performing in your key roles. You have 5 key roles, how are you performing in them? And then lastly, where are you on those 90-day objectives? How are you doing this quarter on our most important, urgent objectives? That's what we're going to talk about. Around each of those 3 things, we're just going to talk about what's working and what's not working. And this is a conversation, meaning it's a 2-way street. You're going to tell me what you need from me as a manager. What am I not doing well in terms of communication, in terms of resources, in terms of how we're interacting with each other? I'm telling you the natural tendency between the manager, if you're my manager, and me, the direct report, is every 90 days, this relationship is gonna start to fray. If we don't do something, meaning if you don't schedule this quarterly conversation for us to connect and talk about where we are around values, roles, priorities in the next quarter, that relationship starts to fray. It's your responsibility as the manager to schedule this so that we can strengthen that relationship and continue to move toward our stated objectives together. Remember we talked before about time and attention being the most important resource or tool that we can give to our direct report. A quarterly conversation is the best way to do that. Unfortunately, so many managers and leaders say, I don't have time to do that, or I see my people all the time, or if there's an issue, I'll just go find them and go tell them. No, schedule this for 30 minutes to an hour once a quarter, and it will change the relationship between you and that direct report.
I love that. Okay, last one. Are you
ready?
ready?
The last one, absolutely. Last one is reward and recognize.
Okay.
So I want to give you just a couple key points around reward and recognize. First of all, 24-hour rule. Man, provide that feedback within 24 hours.
Okay.
Number 2, we've all heard of this before.
When you say provide that feedback within 24 hours, you mean within 24 hours of them accomplishing that awesome thing they did?
Something awesome happens, or they do something that's not aligned with a value or moving them toward one of their objectives, we need to have that conversation within 24 hours, good or bad. Now, if I'm giving positive feedback, I want to do it, if I can, in public. If I'm going to criticize you, I'm always going to do it in private. But here's the key. This is the most valuable tool I've learned around rewarding and recognizing. You can remember it with this acronym, TSP. TSP stands for truth. When I'm giving you feedback, I have to always tell the truth. Right. The S is specific. I can't just say you did a great job, Mike. I got to tell you what about your performance was exceptional in incredible detail. So T is truth, S is specific, and P is positive. I want to give you as much positive feedback as possible. If you think about it, managers and coaches, we're great at the T and the P. I mean, heck, when we played T-ball when we were 5 years old, all of our coaches gave us truthful feedback that was positive. You kids are doing a great job. That is truthful and it's positive.
Keep up the good work, right.
But it wasn't specific. Right. We are all craving specific feedback. It turns out that's the most important thing that a fitness coach or instructor can do, but my goodness, it's the most important thing a manager can do. Truth, specific, and positive whenever I'm rewarding and recognizing, whenever I'm encouraging your heart. Do it with TSP.
Awesome. Guys, we just got 10 fundamentals for leading and managing people here with Luke Carlson. And I wanted to just you dropped a couple books already.
Yeah.
What are 1 or 2 great leadership books that you recommend?
Yeah, great
outside
question.
of Drive and Overcoming the 5 Dysfunctions and all that.
2 books. The Leadership Challenge, which I think is the largest, most evidence-based look at what the work of a leader truly is. Okay. And the second book that I think is so much more practical, that so much this information really comes from, is a book called How to Be a Great Boss by Gino Wickman. The first book is by Kuzis and Posner, 2 authors, and that book's like in its 6th edition. And How to Be a Great Boss was written just a year ago, and that author is Gino Wickman. They're both 2 books that will just change how you think about leadership and management.
I love studying leadership. Those are 2 books I actually haven't read, so I'm excited to pick those up.
Yeah, good.
The book, guys, that got me really started and fired up and realizing the importance was a book called Multipliers. I don't know if you've read that.
Absolutely,
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And then I just got this bug, and I realized how important it was to really develop that part of my game. And business is a lot better, not just business, but relationships in general, even outside of the business, perform a lot better when you learn how to communicate and how to lead.
Absolutely.
So, Luke, thank you so much for spending your time
it was my
here.
pleasure. My pleasure,
and I
Mike.
appreciate it. I know the audience had a great time too. Thank you all for watching, for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you like this episode, then subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, and to our YouTube channel to never miss an episode. You can get all the links by going to boldshow.com. Thanks, and see you next time.